on this call knows, oh, thank you for recording. As everyone on this call knows, this is one of the most polluted sites in our area, and it is extremely important that Madison Realty follow DEC's guidance on the record of decision, the ROD, down to a T, and get every detail right for the health and safety of our community. We are appreciative of Madison's, I think, ongoing engagement and transparency and accountability to not just our community, but to the environmental regulators. And I really want to especially thank DEC. Jane has been working with our community on this site for many, many years. And you know, as Lael said, I'm excited that we are finally having a conversation about getting it remediated, because that's the goal. That is the mission, is for us to clean up the terrible conditions that we've had at NuHart and make it a safe site for people to live there and for everybody around them in the Greenpoint community who go to the playground across the street, who walk down the block. This is our home, and we need this site cleaned up. And so I'm excited about learning more progress from Madison Realty tonight, and for all of your smart questions. Emily Ruby from my team is here. And so if we can help in any way on follow-up, we'll be sure to be all over it with our partners in government and with Lael. Thank you.
Great. I'm Assemblymember Emily Gallagher. And, you know, Lincoln really did it very well. That's why I wanted him to go first. But we are 100% committed to making sure that this site is cleaned up and that the process of cleanup moves forward in a way that is, you know, really sensitive to the community's needs. And I'm very grateful for our partners in government, the Department of Health, the DEC, and all of you. So I'm going to pass it over to Senator Gonzalez so we can get this party started.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Gallagher. Hi, everyone. I'm State Senator Gonzalez. I feel so good to be here and see some familiar faces. But I also want to just really echo what Councilmember Ressler and Assemblymember Gallagher have said, and really commend them for the work that they've been doing on this for years, as along with North Brooklyn neighbors and all of the community organizers and activists that have gotten us to this point. You know, I feel very proud to be able to work with all of you and represent this part of Brooklyn. And you know, I'm calling in from Albany right now. We had a really long week where we passed the Build Public Renewables Act in the Senate. And what I talked about was how our district has been so deeply affected for generations by climate catastrophes, from Astoria and Asma Alley down to Greenpoint, Williamsburg. And so, you know, as Councilmember Ressler said, there is, moving forward, there's no question what we're here to do. We have to clean up. We have to remediate NuHart, and we have to do so in a way where our community is centered, that is sensitive, as Assemblymember Gallagher said, sensitive to our community, because for generations we've been impacted and left out of those conversations. So I also just want to extend a huge thank you to everyone on this call for being here, to being part of that conversation, and know that, you know, I will be working alongside our electeds to ensure that, you know, we have a path forward that's comfortable for everyone and actually gets the job done. So again, so excited to be here, and thank you for having me. Yeah.
And thank you, Kristen and Emily. You guys it's fun to get to work with you both. I was just remiss in one thing. We had also asked DOB to join us tonight because I know folks have been concerned about some of the vibrations that have come from the installation of the cutoff wall, and so we just wanted them to be here as well if there are any issues that they can assist with, or so we have their support. So thanks again, Lael, for convening us and North Brooklyn neighbors for their hard work on this over many years.
Great. Yeah, so I think we should just get into it so we have as much time for questions as possible. So I'm going to hand it over to Madison Realty and Haley and Aldrich. Yeah, kick it over to you. And we are not hearing you if you're saying anything.
Zach, we can't hear anything.
Give you another minute or two, and if not, maybe we could get Jane ready to speak while they sort out their technical difficulties. So let's just hold on a minute or two.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you with a lot of echo. I'll just say that as we're waiting, you can feel free to put questions in the chat, but I think we are going to go through chat, but I think it's also good to hear directly from people. So at the end, during the question and answer session, we're going to ask that if you feel comfortable, I'll call on
Sorry
people
about
to
that.
unmute.
Let's see if we can figure this out. Share
I'll call on
screen.
people to
Yes.
unmute themselves and yeah. All right,
In
go
action?
ahead.
Or do you see just the PowerPoint or other things too?
Minimize my email for a sec. Sorry.
We can see all of your tabs. No, I'm just kidding.
Are we good?
See
or
your,
no?
I see your personal phone number right now.
Was I not supposed to put that in the chat?
I can't hear you, Lincoln. Oh, hold on. This is terrible. Are we good now or no?
We can hear you. We don't.
There we
You wanna
go. We're
start?
good. We're in action. All right, we're pulling up the presentation, but I wanted to start off and thank everyone, Lael, North Brooklyn Neighbors, Jane, DC, your team, Lincoln, Emily, Senator Gonzalez. I think it's the first time we're meeting, Steve and CB1, and obviously the rest of the community. This is another milestone, another presentation in the process for us to clean up NuHart. We understand the importance and sensitivity for the community. It's a collaborative effort, and we're excited to show you where we are today, what the plan is moving forward, and we continue to be here to respond to all your questions, concerns, and work together through the cleanup. So let's see if we can pull this up. Technology. On mute for a second.
Zach, do you want to email the present? Can you email the presentation to one of us and we can pull it up?
Literally what we're looking to do right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna put I'm gonna be on again. So
Thank you, Marcin.
Jane, do you hear us?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
getting
wow.
feedback though, because I'm hearing you from your speakers and
That
from
works. Sorry,
now.
everyone.
Now I can hear you.
It's okay. Well, hopefully the NuHart cleanup goes better than this presentation so far. Okay. Can you guys see the screen?
I gotta. Nope. Hit it behind this. Press the green, press share.
No one.
I know, I'm doing the best I can here.
Community.
I can't see. I know. It is.
Yeah, we got this now?
Yes, it's up.
Oh, baby. Okay. All right, so most of you know NuHart or 49 DuPont. The new addresses for the two buildings or the future buildings are 65 DuPont and 75 DuPont Street. Let's go to the next slide. So quickly, I think some of you have seen this slide in previous presentations, but we wanted to orient everyone with the development site that you see highlighted with that slight orange hue. South is DuPont, left is Franklin, and north of the north part of the screen is Clay Street. Next slide, please. So here's a zoomed in site plan. On the left side, outlined in light blue, is the Superfund portion of the site. On the right-hand side, outlined in green, that looks like an L, is the brownfield portion of the site. Next slide. So here's a quick overview of the proposed new development, totaling about 471 rental apartments. There will be a parking garage and ground floor retail on the corner of Franklin and Clay. 30% of the units will be affordable. We're participating in the voluntary inclusionary housing program, as well as the Affordable New York 421A program, which obviously is critical to the success of the cleanup and this project. Go back. So quickly, here's an overview and some aerial shots of the work that's been completed so far. Demolition, as most of you know, is 100% complete. The sheet pile installation is about 90% complete on the brownfield portion. And as you see on the right-hand portion in that overview, the cutoff wall, which is really important, which basically is monitoring well, and we'll show you in a diagram all along Franklin Street. And then on the corner of Franklin and DuPont, what, 100 feet? How many feet is the cutoff wall on DuPont?
150.
150 feet on DuPont is also substantially complete. So obviously what was critical for us was to complete the on-site cutoff wall and the off-site cutoff wall prior to or simultaneous as the rest of the site work progresses. Here's a quick diagram and overview of the progress on the off-site cutoff wall. So this is basically diagonal from the corner of Franklin and DuPont. Most of you would know that as the Park Tower potential school site. As you can see, the orange are piles that have been completed. And a total of 223 piles are required. We've completed 188 of them, which means about 85% of this cutoff wall is complete. And we expect the remaining piles to be completed in the next 2 weeks. Here's a quick overview of the site plan and phasing. So as we just said, as you see, bottom left-hand side of that diagram is the cutoff wall that really was done first. And then we're going to progress to the right-hand portion where you see phase 1 of the site. So we move to the brownfield portion. What you see highlighted in phase 1 in light pink is a soil mix wall. The rig was actually delivered tonight, and that's critical path for us to install. So we can erect the tent that's going to be required to remediate that portion of the site. Right south of phase 1, you'll see no tent in this location. The whole idea is the tent will be erected for phase 1 in March. We should complete phase 1 in June, and then the tent will be broken down and erected where you see phase 2. And if this sounds a little bit complicated, we have renderings that will follow this slide to visualize what you can expect on the site. After we finish phase 2 excavation remediation, which will be about, let's say, August, then we will move to phase 3, and that hopefully will be completed by the end of the year. Next slide. So here's a rendering. Keep in mind, it's not perfect, but the whole idea was to visualize what you guys can expect. So you see a tent erected. This is phase one. This will be erected, give or take March. This will be on the clay side of the site. You see the tent. You see that little tent structure, which is sort of closer to us. That's an airlock. Trucks will go in there, go to the site, and then come out. And then the green box is basically an air handler unit that is whole part of the negative pressure enclosure, part of the record of decision, and part of making sure that this is executed in compliance with DEC, DOH, and the ROD. Next slide shows you moving that tent to phase two, which now we're on the Superfund site. Again, those green boxes are air handler units. And once that's completed, let's say, August, we move to phase three, where we hopefully work through the fourth quarter of 2023 and complete the excavation and remediation. Next slide. I think big picture, this is really the meat of our presentation. We want to show you what you can expect to see on site. We want to talk through general schedule and phasing for the excavation, remediation, and foundation phase. And we're here to answer any questions and talk through next steps. So this just reiterates our commitment to the community. We're here. I know you have Ashley's email at Capolino. We have a newsletter that goes out every single week. Post updates and post them on the site fence every single week. And we're a resource. If you have a question, ask us. And we're here to clean this up safely, quickly, and we're excited for the new development in the near future.
Great. I think we're going to move on to Jane O'Connell from DEC to give a few remarks before we head into the question and answer portion.
Okay, I didn't prepare a formal presentation. I think what Madison Realty Capital just showed is very, that's sort of where we are right now. We have the record of decision that was issued several years ago. As you know, there was a bankruptcy proceeding that dragged things on for a while. And now that Madison Realty Capital is the owner and the developer, we've seen, I would say, more progress in the last 6 months or a year than we've seen in a long, long time. We have a very robust record of decision that we have developed for this site. The North Brooklyn Neighbors has a technical assistance grant. They have hired a community consultant who has provided assistance to the community to help them understand the intricacies of the details of the sort of technical aspects of this program. But it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a fairly simple remedy. We're going to be digging up all this contamination and getting it out. There are some details about community air monitoring that we've discussed in the past, and we can certainly give some more details on those today. As I mentioned back in, I guess in October was the last time we had got the group together. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's going to be some short-term impacts to facilitate the remediation of this site. But ultimately, the goal is to get as much of this contamination out of the ground, out of the neighborhood. That's the most comprehensive remedy that we can come up with. In terms of what kind of impacts you might see, what I'm talking about is, there's going to get this stuff out, we need to bring in a lot of trucks. Trucks have to come in, they have to get loaded. Zach showed a picture of the tent with the air handling unit. The trucks would go inside of that. they would get loaded, they would get sealed, and then they would go back out. There's a lot of soil that has to be removed, a lot of contaminated soil that has to be removed. So, you know, to the extent that, you know, there are set truck routes that the City Department of Transportation has established, they will have to follow all those truck routes. And those are the kind of impacts that, you know, that might be, you know, upsetting or problematic for the neighbors. But again, it's the only way to get this stuff, a permanent remedy here, is to get this material out. So that's sort of my 50-cent tour. I'm happy to, you know, I'm not sure if the folks on the phone are the same group that have been on in the past. I'm happy to go through more details if you want. But I think, you know, we'd like to just answer whatever questions come up at this point, Lil.
Great. Yeah, if you could raise your hand, we'll start getting a queue. But I guess in the meantime, I guess there's questions about the sealing in the trucks, like how well sealed are the contaminants going to be? Is it just a cover that goes on top? Can you outline a little bit about that?
It's going to depend on whether it's dry soil, wet soil. There are different types of liners that have to go into the trucks. There are different types of sealed covers that have to go on. I'm not sure whether Zach or James, if you guys have you contracted with the truckers yet? Have you set what the minimum requirements are? I don't know if you've contracted with the truckers yet.
So to answer your question, we have not contracted yet. We're still scoping and vetting the couple bidders. But I can defer to James and yourself, Jane, obviously, whatever's required per DEC standards for trucks for exporting this material from the site. Those are the guidelines, and that's what's in the contract and what we need to follow. So.
Yeah, so they'll have the tight fitting covers that are opaque. They for soil that has LNAPL in it, they'll be lined, the trucks itself, with a watertight liner. And then basically the trucks will be evaluated and inspected before they leave the site to make sure that there's no debris or anything hanging off, and they'll be washed.
Okay, I see Steve with his hand raised, and then up next would be Deborah. So go ahead, Steve, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Lael and NBN for convening this meeting, and Madison and DEC and everyone. Yeah, just kind of starting at the beginning, just revisit as the barriers are being installed, the cutoff wall and the other barrier that's being created, how monitoring is happening in terms of just watching out for potential migration. People are already experiencing vibrations from the installation of these barriers. So like beyond, like off-site, like to beyond, like on DuPont or other surrounding streets and Franklin. I know you've talked about this, but I just like if you could just speak to it again.
Steve, I'm not sure what type of monitoring are you talking about? Are you talking about vibration monitoring?
Or contamination migration, like plume migration.
Right. So we have, we have a very extensive series of monitoring wells in and around the site that extend off site. And those are being monitored throughout the installation of the various cutoff walls. And we don't want to, the idea here is not to create a problem where one doesn't exist. We want to make sure that we are keeping on top of it. And there was a reason why we required that they put in certain types of piles, drilled piles or excavated and I don't know what the right word is, but they're driven as opposed to
Correct.
pounded in. Because we did not want to create it may seem like there's a lot of vibration out there, but what we tried to do initially with the first cutoff walls was to do it with as little vibration as possible.
But who's testing the vibration? Because like I live on Eagle Street and I can literally feel my entire apartment shaking. So that's very, it's scary at times. So it's yeah, it may seem like vibration because it's a very large project, but it really feels like the ceiling or the walls are gonna cave in.
So can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a few things, right? So per DOB, our supportive excavation contractor on the approved plans, there's a monitoring plan, which basically lays out all the requirements for monitoring on adjacent buildings within certain proximity. So there's optical monitors. So those could be like little reflective stickers that are on adjacent buildings that basically we send out a surveyor periodically that's required to take measurements to make sure that the buildings have not moved or settled or there's no impact to that. In addition, the adjacent buildings on Clay and DuPont, there's vibration monitors. So we're constantly monitoring vibrations. If there is a spike, right, above a threshold that would be permitted, let's say by the engineer, or by a DOB, there's immediate alerts that are sent out to the neighbors, to the engineer and the contractor to basically stop work and evaluate what the situation is. So
I'm sorry,
you
but
know,
are you taking into account the fact that there's vibration coming from other sites? Because I feel like, should we worry about the fact that it's not just this site that's creating the vibration, but also all other places?
So that's gonna be part 2 of this. So that's sort of like the process by DOB. On site, there's records of all these monitoring reports. If there's an exceedance, we have to deal with it. Sometimes if there's like a piece of steel that is offloaded off a truck and it hits the slab, that can trigger it. But obviously that was a one-off. There's not a larger issue. So we have a special inspector who's also a representative from the SOE engineer who's on site every single day overseeing all the work to make sure that it complies with the approved plans and that, the construction manager and subcontractor are doing what they're supposed to do. Your point, there is demolition on Clay Street. And when we've gotten emails from Jane or from Ashley or from the community about some vibrations and noise or whatever, we've researched, and it was actually, there was very little work being done on our site, and it was triggered by some of the work that was done on adjacent sites. So we don't have access, we can't necessarily monitor what's going on at adjacent site. They obviously are required per code to do whatever they're supposed to do with their engineers. But all we can do is, follow DOB, the code, follow our engineer, follow the recommendations. If there is an instance, we have to respond proactively and make sure that everything is safe, reported properly, and, deal with it.
I'm gonna go ahead and let Deborah, thanks for your patience.
Good evening, all. This is a little bit overwhelming because, okay, you guys said, number one, that there were signs. I would like to know exactly where those signs are at. And if you're talking about the postings that's flat on those wooden pieces, I think more needs to be done because those signs need to be put. As you know, Greenpoint is growing. There are people that's moving in here, and we have a lot of children in this area. And these parents and these people need to be informed of what's going on. This contamination really, it really scares me because one, besides the vibrations that's been happening on a daily on and off place, I've been experiencing, I even sent to the management groundwater for like 3 or 4 days straight. There's some people who can afford to buy bottled water or not. But then again, I'm thinking about the children that's coming up in this area, because we're going to be affected long after this, regardless of what you guys say. This park across the street that I'm directly in front of, we have children from the different schools there. Are you informing these children or the staff or the schools that this contamination is taking place? Because they use this park winter, sleet, or snow every day, whether it's raining, it stops raining. There are people out there coming from all areas, babies. What are you guys doing for the safety of these little people that's coming up? Because really, I mean, my concern is truly us as well, but what about them?
Hi, this is Scarlett from New York State Department of Health. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Miss Scarlett. How are you doing?
Hi. All right. There's a few things that you said there that I want to speak to. First of all, the first one was your drinking water.
Yes.
You're concerned about the groundwater that's impacted and how that can affect people. And I want to say that the drinking water that comes out of your tap is public water. That means it's piped in to where you live to come out of your faucet, and it's tested regularly to make sure that it doesn't have any impacts that could cause any issues or anything. So they test that very regularly. That's not the same water that's in the ground at the site and near the site.
Right.
Okay,
The drinking water in New York City comes from upstate reservoirs.
And I took that. Yes, I understood that from the first time that we had this meeting. However, since the banging and all of that, I took pictures and I sent it. I believe I sent it to board one as well about all brownness. The water was brown for like 3 days straight. And my concern is I have bottled water. I can boil water. What about the parents that have little children that cannot? Okay, I get it. You said it's not connected, but something was occurring.
Yeah, and honestly, that's something we can definitely look into, and we can talk to everybody about that, about what it is. I know that whenever they flush hydrants or do anything, there are times that there can be material inside the pipe itself that can cause, as the pipe, if it rusts a little bit or whatnot, that can actually cause stuff to kind of go through that are inside the pipe and come out into your tap. That's something that, definitely I'll contact, I'll contact the people and talk to them about it in our Bureau of Public Water Supply Protection. But that might be because of vibrations or for whatever reason, but at the same time, that's not from contamination at the site. That would be from what's inside the water line itself, if that water line is deteriorating. So, I do appreciate you bringing that up to us, because, we wouldn't necessarily know otherwise. So.
Okay. So, thank you. What about the signs?
Yeah, so I could just jump in here too. So a few things. I appreciate your comment. One, obviously it's important for us to communicate weekly, and we set up the online or weekly newsletter that goes out. There's a QR code, and I believe we have upwards of 370 people that have registered that receive those. So there's notices and daily reports that are uploaded.
Okay, so you said a weekly, excuse me, sir, you said a weekly newsletter. Where can I get that? Because I live right in the building directly in front of NuHart. I have never seen it, and I'm very active in the community.
So we can send you the link. There's also the sign that you referenced on the construction fence.
Okay.
There's a website or a QR code there that if you take your phone, if you have one, you could sign up and it goes there. If you don't have that, Ashley, who's on our team, is here. We have your name. We'll follow up and make sure that you're registered.
But it's not just for me, sir. I'm talking about for every resident that's in this development, and that the ones that's coming in need to know. It's not me. I can find the information. I'm here tonight, right? My thing is, what are you doing to inform our residents that live down here that this contamination is going to take place and that you need to be aware of ABC? That's all I need to know.
We're working with community groups like North Brooklyn Neighbors and CB1. We're doing these engagements with the community. We're working with the local elected officials and making sure they have the latest information and they can get it out to the constituents. We have the online newsletter. We're posting weekly on site. Again, if you have any additional recommendations, we're open to it, but our goal is to spread the news and make sure that everyone feels as informed as possible about the day-to-day activities on this site.
Thank you.
And make sure that everybody who has RSVP'd for the Zoom tonight is added to the newsletter list so that you're getting the weekly communications from Madison, which are helpful
Thank you.
to understand what's going on. And what we've tried to do in advance of these quarterly meetings is, you know, that we're having every 3 months or so, is to try and get some flyers and posters up around the neighborhood too, just to build awareness. And I don't know that we had a chance to flyer for this meeting, but we'll be sure to come back and get some flyers up more broadly and work with Madison to get the word out, because we want to make sure that everybody knows about what's going on and is getting the regular emails and is in touch. We've also been doing in-person briefings over at Mary D Senior Center, where we have a largely senior and Polish population, senior housing building, excuse me, over on DuPont Street. And so we want to make sure that we're doing as much outreach as we can to engage folks who aren't as technologically savvy and aren't online. So we'll continue to try and work with Madison and DC and everyone involved to try to get the word out in the community, and appreciate everybody on this call's assistance in sharing information with neighbors and getting them on the email newsletter list as well. Thank you.
And I'll also say, Scarlett, if you could drop your contact information. I know you've given it before. Thanks for doing it again. That would be really great.
Sure, absolutely. But if I could also speak to one more thing that was mentioned there, the surrounding community and how what protections are in place to ensure that people aren't exposed to any contamination, because it's really important to get the contamination cleaned up at the site. We don't want it to sit there, to stay there, to potentially be a problem in the future for future generations. So it's extremely important to clean this up, but to do it in a manner that's protective of public health, that's not going to, cause exposures. That's something that we're very cognizant of as part of this remediation. That's why Department of Health is involved in all of this. We review all the documents, we review the remedial plans, we sign off on that as well. So there's going to be community air monitoring, and there actually is already community air monitoring as part of this remediation. And that's to make sure that any contamination that's on the site as they're cleaning it up is not going to be going off site, basically, not going to affect the surrounding community, because these air monitors are going to be placed in several locations around the site, close to where they're actually doing work. And there's, regular requirements where we receive the data, we review the data and make sure that there's no issues, basically, because if there is, then, actions would need to be taken. So that's something we're extremely cognizant about and want to make sure that, it's not affecting the community in that way. So that's one measure that's in place also. I understand about the vibrations. That's not really our bailiwick, but the community air monitoring is something we're going to really pay attention to as well. And again, I said I'll follow up on that public water stuff. So I put my contact information in there too, and you can reach out to us with any additional questions you may think of after the meeting as well.
Scarlett, you mentioned the level of exposure when it comes to the contaminants. What is an acceptable level of exposure? So I know it can't be 0%. So what exactly is it?
Right. So what I mean by that is, I mean that we don't want the work that's going on cleaning up the site to affect the community, basically. And that's something that we look at as well. So what we have community air monitoring stations that are placed upwind of the site, downwind of the site, and they're very, very sensitive. They can see, really low levels that would not be something that, it would be really much of a problem, but at the same time, it would kind of really give us an indication of whether there's anything migrating off site to affect the surrounding community. And if those levels are reached, it's not, a lot of people think that those action levels that we have are set so that, there's some sort of alarm or concern for the community. It's really just to measure whether or not what's going on at the site could be going off site, through dust.
But that's specifically what I was asking. So what's the level that's actually allowed? Similar to the toxic remediation. I know that with the contracts and everything, you aren't expected to get rid of 100% of the toxins. So what percent of the toxins are the companies, what is there? Okay, is it 87%, 92%, or 55%?
It's not really set up like that. The way we have it is we have standards, criteria, and guidance values that we have comparisons for in New York State. So there's going to be soil guidance values that or soil cleanup objectives rather, that the contamination on the site is compared to, and those were based upon samples that were taken all over New York State to kind of get an idea of what we see all over New York State naturally occurring and whatnot. And also those were reviewed with our Bureau of Toxic Substance Assessment to see what sort of health concerns there could be with concentration. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds there, but basically it's not so much a percentage of contamination to remove as, are we looking to clean this up to make it suitable for residential use or to make it suitable for commercial use?
But so that's what I'm asking. And I feel like what's acceptable for residential use?
I mean,
Are we talking, I'm sorry, are you asking what's acceptable in terms of what the soil is after the remedy is done?
So
No,
the
she's
toxic
talking about-
remediation and also the level of exposure. What are acceptable uses for residential communities?
So the soil cleanup objectives we've set for this site are applicable for restricted residential use, which is an apartment building. That's what a multifamily building that's being built.
That I'm still looking for an acceptable use amount. So I
Well, it
feel like
depends
I'm
on
not-
what a specific, okay, so for each different chemical.
Specifically for NuHart in this area, what is acceptable use percentages?
I'm not following you.
I think like
chemical is.
sorry, can I jump in? Like I feel like her question has been very clear and like you guys are not understanding. Like I have an air monitor at home. It tells me green is good, yellow is medium, red is bad. Like does the air monitor say this is bad and maybe we can reassess the situation?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was misunderstanding. You're asking for the community air monitoring. What are we setting the response levels at?
Yeah,
no,
like,
but
what's the
also,
bar?
yes, but can you also be very clear with what the other person is asking? There are phthalates in tanks under the ground. We want to know what's an acceptable level of phthalate exposure when this construction is being done. Like, what does the EPA, what do you guys, what is acceptable amount of phthalates for our kids? Because we all know that they are hormone disruptors and they cause cancer.
Okay, but during the remediation, there's not going to be any exposure to those because that will be happening underneath the tent. No one in the community will come in contact with that material, only the workers on the site.
And what about the VOCs that are on the brownfield portion of the site? Because those are more volatiles, and therefore I feel like with the demolition that's already happened, I feel like we could potentially have been exposed to a lot of
No, because again, those VOCs are still, they're under the ground. They're underground right now. All of that, the VOC contaminated soil will also be excavated underneath the tent that has all of the air inside that tent is going to be treated before it is discharged. There's the goal here is to have zero exposure of any chemicals that we are cleaning up going off site to the community. That's the goal.
That's the goal, but what is actually the reality of it?
That's why we have.
And I feel like that answer is not. Maybe you don't know the answer. That's okay if you don't know. But what we're asking is very clear.
So
we monitor for two different things. We monitor for volatile organic compounds, and we monitor for particulates. And we have specific, and Scarlett, if you can remember off the top of your head what we set the levels at, it's 5 ppm above background.
Right. So we'll have air monitoring that is upwind, where the wind is blowing onto the site, where they're actually doing any sort of remedial activities. And then we have a monitor that's downwind. And so we want to see whatever is being done on the site, if it's actually increasing those volatile organic compounds. They're very sensitive. And if we do reach that limit, that action level of the 5 there, we're going to actually see, okay, do we need to stop work? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do, what is the reasoning behind that? So as Jane said, the goal here is not to have any exposures, because if you're not coming in contact with it, then there wouldn't be a concern for any sort of health effects. And that's our goal. We don't want anyone to come in contact with contamination associated with the site as part of the cleanup. The cleanup needs to be done in a way that's protective of public health in the environment. That's why, having the work done underneath a tent with the air handling systems, it makes it so that as you're excavating it out, if it's actually causing any increase in volatile organic compounds or particulates, that's filtered out, so that it's not affecting the outside community. But in order to make sure that everything is working as planned, we have these additional community air monitoring stations around, so that if we do start to see that there are levels being identified of volatile organic compounds that are higher in the downwind and in the upwind, they can stop doing things. They can do best
She
management
just
practice.
froze.
Oh, I'm frozen?
No, now you're back.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I mean, that's the whole point. There's a lot of different analytes that are associated. There's a lot of different contaminants that are looked for in these, in the sites. So when we're looking at it, we're not looking at it a percentage. We're not looking at it as a green is good, or, yellow is, kind of getting there to be a problem. We look at, in the evaluation of the site, we look at the soil, we look at the groundwater, we look at the air, we look at the air that's
So do
in
we
the
know
soil.
exactly how much volatile organic compounds and particulates are underground?
Yes, we have all that data from the original investigation.
Okay, and so what algorithm will be used in order to decide how many air handlers will be suffice for this area?
There are under DEC's air discharge program, like we have a program within the air DEC that issues permits for discharge into the air. We have levels set that they have to meet before they can discharge. So yes, there are specific levels for the air handling systems, what they can discharge. I don't know what those numbers are off the top of my head. I can find out for you, and I can share them with Lael, and she can share them with everybody else.
I think this has been an important part of the conversation, and I have no doubt we're going to come back to it, but there are people who have been waiting with their hands up. So if anybody else wants to get in queue, we have 5 or 6 people waiting. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Darren Lippman.
Darren, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
Sorry. No.
If he puts it in chat, if he can't.
All right, while you sort that out, Darren, we're going to move to Heather, and we'll come back to you after Heather.
Hi, everybody. So I have a few questions. I did put a few in the chat. One is I saw in the presentation that you have 35 more piles to drive for the retaining the wall. Is that just for the one tent? Will you be doing like piles, like are you doing all the piles at once right now, and then we'll phase the tent construction? How is that? I have other questions, like, is there going to be another entrance that these trucks are going to come in and out of? Is it on DuPont? Is it on Clay? Maybe is it on Franklin? So exiting of trucks with dirt, that was one of my other questions. And I have a couple more, but I'll let you address maybe those first couple.
Okay, sorry. So Heather, to answer your first question, and sorry if it wasn't clear, the piles that are remaining is for the off-site cutoff wall. And that actually is on, if I'm standing on Franklin and DuPont, it's the southwest corner. It's not physically on our site. So part of the record of decision was to install that wall. So if there was any migrations, it wouldn't go on that site. So
I
that's
see.
that's separate from the tent, has nothing to do with our site and the tent. So that's
Okay.
work that's going on simultaneously. That's almost complete.
Got it.
Sir,
How
the
many,
next
how
part-
many yeah, well, how many piles do you plan to, because this is where the vibrations are emanating from. You know, is the driving of those, I mean, I have,
So
because.
there's no vibrations from those. The vibrations that you would potentially feel would be from the sheet piles. That's the steel sheets that you see
Yes.
being installed on our site. So I
Yes.
just want to separate the two.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Off-site, no vibration. Those are, caissons going in the ground, concrete or grout being poured, cutoff wall off-site. On our site, vibrations that you would feel after the initial cutoff wall was installed on Franklin and DuPont are from the sheets and the drill rig. The good news is that's probably 90% done, and we expect to be complete with all the sheets and all the vibration within the next 2 weeks. So you shouldn't feel any vibrations really after that.
Okay, so the next, like,
2 weeks.
okay. The other question was on and off-site, you know, trucking of the dirt.
so-
Is there one entrance to?
So, I mean, I can get back to you, but generally the idea is come down DuPont, go through the site, and you exit on Clay and go to whatever facility the truck is going. The whole idea is there should be no idling in front of the site or in the residential area. I believe on the other side of Manhattan, where there's some industrial facilities, if there was a truck that was waiting, that's where it would wait. It wouldn't wait in front of the residential area. So that's the plan that's worked out with the construction manager and our subcontractors.
Okay.
Well, so with with the vibrations, then with the sheet piles, going in the steel sheet piles, is the plume, can the monitors tell if the plume is shifting? Because I mean, it shifts my house like pretty significantly. So
I mean,
does that,
listen, I'll let the smarter, more technical people answer this, but generally, right, the whole point of the sheet pile is it's a physical barrier to protect whatever is in the site from going off the site. And what DC is required and what James and Haley Aldrich are here is we've monitoring wells around the site. So they have periodic measurements that they basically put something in the monitoring well and they test whatever is in there and benchmark it against previous readings over a period of time.
We have an oil water separator probe, an oil water probe that we drop into all of the wells. And we have not seen any change in the LNAPL plume to date from all of the work being done.
okay, and it's been done during when they're like
During the
vibrating
vibration, correct.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Darren, I see you've rejoined. Want to give you a chance.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, first off, I want to thank the elected officials for hosting this meeting, and I especially want to thank Kristen Gonzalez. This is the first time of the many meetings we've had to have a state senator at this meeting, so appreciate that and hope you come to more of these. I want to echo the vibration issue and take it a little further. Yes, we were vibrating. My floor was vibrating. It was definitely coming from the sheets. We could look out the window and see that it was definitely that and not 28 Clay. 28 Clay, just like many of the buildings around here in the 10 years so of construction that we've been having with their pile drivers have shaken our building pretty seriously to the point where people would have items fall off their walls. And it's been pretty horrendous here. So, just recently 28 Clay dropped a wall when they're doing their work 2 weeks ago, and they shook our building so bad they broke a window in our building. And I've been working with the councilman's office on that and trying to go back and forth and figure out how we can get remediation, how to prevent them from pile driving, which brings me to what I want. And before I say that is thresholds. We've had seismic in our building. The seismic thresholds from the DOB are ridiculously high. So even with that, people are having stuff off their walls and we're under the threshold. So first off, I want to commit to lower thresholds. I want to get an agreement going between everybody here on that, realistic thresholds. And number two, pile drivers have settings on them to lower and raise the power that they have. I was 77 Commercial Street. I, begged them to lower the power on theirs. They wouldn't do it. I don't really want to go through this again. What I want is, drilling. I want the whole thing drilled. I don't want any pile driving. And I want to find out, I know we're not in that phase yet, but I want to, what is the plan is my question for piles when the actual work is done, and what's the timeline for that? That would be for Madison. Did you guys hear me?
Yeah.
That's a question for Madison.
Yeah,
Realty.
I mean, listen, as I said, 90% of the sheet pile work is already complete. I think the thresholds, we follow DOB, they put it in for a reason. I think also what's important is a balance. Obviously, if you don't have the drill and some of that power, getting to that depth that we need to for the record decision, that's important. So that's how you put the steel sheet through the earth to get to that location. So our goal is to install it safely, make sure that we're in compliance with whatever thresholds. If there was an exceedance, we obviously stop and evaluate.
Yeah, you're not hearing, you didn't hear the question though. The question was not this phase. I'm fine with the minor vibration I'm getting now. I'm more worried about your pile driving phase. So when you do your actual foundation.
There's no pile driving, right? This is the whole supportive excavation, right? It's basically the sheet piles around.
I'm talking about a future phase, when you actually put in the final foundation. When you start to build your building, right? Not this phase.
No, it's a
later.
mat foundation. So I'm not, that's what I'm not understanding. It's a mat foundation.
It's not a pile supported
Basically-
foundation, Darren.
So there'll be no piles. Great.
It's a lot of, it's a lot of concrete, and the weight of it holds down against the uplift of the water.
I didn't understand it. I appreciate that answer. And then, great, wonderful. The second thing I want to do just to the electeds was when Stephen Levin was around, we used to do, we had so many construction sites, and now we still have so many construction sites. I don't think we only be doing this meeting. I think we need to do a meeting where we have, inter sites talking together, so we can all have a discussion collectively and find out what's going on with just not this site, but all the local sites here. I think there's 3 more already going on here. It's Greenpoint Landing, 29 Clay. And then to my right, there's one.
Thanks for that question, Darren. We're happy. We've been doing individual meetings for select sites where there are really complex issues and that have broader impacts, such as NuHart, which is a state Superfund site, and where the complexity of the record of decision and the longstanding environmental issues we felt required in-depth community meetings, such as the one we're having now. But we're very happy to reconvene with stakeholders across the neighborhood who are involved in construction projects to see if there are any ways in which we can better coordinate and mitigate issues around parking, around noise, around waste removal. We also have a meeting around One Java, the Lenley site at Java and West, where we've had some issues.
But Lincoln, so these gentlemen, this is like our 3rd meeting with this company, which I greatly appreciate, but no one else is putting up signs to say, hey, come to our meeting. This is the first time that I'm actually hearing that there are other meetings going on other places. So yeah, these guys are taking the heat for it, but it's a collective value, and they don't know what the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So how can we shake hands?
Well, I really appreciate that. We want to improve coordination across the neighborhood as a whole. This site in particular has some very longstanding complex environmental issues that we believe requires its own separate conversation with DEC and the Department of Health on the call to engage together with Madison. But we hear you that broadly there are a variety of construction issues in Northern Greenpoint and along the waterfront, and we're happy to do consistent convenings with the development teams, with the Department of Buildings, and with neighbors to think about how we can address all the different issues that are going on. We've been doing one-off meetings.
So it's not you guys, it's the construction companies and
Yeah, but-
and their people. Like, you guys are great to put this together, but what are they doing?
Well, look, we're here to advocate for the community. It's our job to be the voice for you and for all of our neighbors. And so we're going to do our best to hold developers accountable, make sure that they're engaging with us, and working with Emily and Kristen as our partners in government. We can help make that happen. So thank you for this.
Yeah, well, sorry to jump in, but I think
Thank
that's
you.
a good
I
idea.
appreciate that.
And I think that, of course, I get a phone call as soon as I go off mute. I think that's a really good idea. And I live not far from the site either. And I know what, for lack of a better word, a shit show it is down there. So
Thank you.
It's a total mess, and it doesn't feel safe to even walk down the street. And I'm making a list here of all the things that we need to look into beyond this site, because like, I'm even thinking, like, yesterday there was a huge film shoot down here. Like, we just cannot have all of these things happening at once. It's like, I get that everybody's thinking about their particular business, but like, those of us who live here together, like, it's beyond business, right? So yeah, I'm gonna work on trying to, it's gonna be really, I'm just telling you, it's gonna be really hard to get everybody together in one room. But we're gonna do our damnedest to make it happen. And in a separate,
I tell you one thing, everybody's off on Sunday because I don't hear anything on Sunday.
I think it's not allowed on Sunday.
I know, that was just,
yeah.
You said it'll be hard to get everyone into the same room.
Yeah.
Sunday, they're there.
Yeah, we'll have to go looking for them. Find them all.
So, Emily, just to jump in and for everyone. So actually, we have a project in another group in another neighborhood, and I actually found it somewhat helpful. They have like a monthly sort of task force. The representative from all the electeds, the local developers join, leadership from community organizations join once a month with an agenda.
Love it.
They discuss progress. So I know Madison's definitely open to it. I'm not going to say we'll necessarily take the lead organizing, but if anyone else on this call wants to take the lead organizing from the elected side or North Brooklyn neighbors, we're happy to participate monthly in that meeting. And hopefully we can congregate whatever stakeholders are in the community to hopefully keep everyone more informed and, be an active resource to communicate on progress and address concerns, and be as helpful as we can.
And could you privately just send me the info of who the representatives are in that neighborhood so I can see, like, if they have any tips for us?
Yeah, we can just connect. Yes, we can connect offline.
Great.
Perfect.
And I'll go back on mute and let the others ask questions. I have my own questions, but I'll leave those for when I'm called on. Thank you.
All right. So up next is Zach and then Laura. And we only have about 25 minutes left. So just asking people to be brief.
I will be as brief as possible. Thank you all so much for hosting the meeting, but I'll dive right into it. A big question that came up before, and I appreciate the emails that go out weekly that tell us at the end of the week before's air quality monitoring situation. I also fully understand that the air quality monitors send out warnings and will cause all sorts of red flags if things go off. But to me, it's a little bit ridiculous that, and I realize this is not Madison Realty, they're probably following all the rules that they have to follow. I get it. Maybe this is more an issue for Albany or New York City specifically to change something to get it done. But it's ridiculous that the community doesn't own the data on the air quality. And I appreciate also that, like, Madison says, hey, if their air quality is bad across the street from us, that's not our thing. That's from other construction and other trucks. I get that too. But ultimately, it's the aggregate air that we're breathing, right? It's the aggregate situation. So I don't know what the solution is, and I'm guessing it has to do with either getting funding or getting approval to, maybe it's adding additional air monitors that are linked up to Twitter or some other way for us as a community to see real-time data that doesn't have to be cleaned up, vetted, passed through, various organizations and then given to us in a 2-week delay, so that we can know real time if there's something spiking and it's time to stay inside, or, again, I hope these things never happen, but knowing a week later that you were exposed to something seems inappropriate at best. The other thing too is just in terms of getting information out. I know that there's some rules about what's allowed to be posted on the walls surrounding construction sites, but I see Lion Construction and Madison Realty things all over the construction site. I think being able to post about these meetings in a more formal way, post about ways for people to get information in real time. I feel like an incredible percentage of the community around this space have no clue that there's a Superfund here, let alone that we're cleaning it up and that there's potential danger. And hopefully there won't be, but I think informing the neighborhood's important, giving us access to the data that we're impacted by. I appreciate everyone being here, but the people on the call, like, we all have to breathe the air. We all have to live and walk through it every day and work in it and be in it. And most of the people running Madison Realty and the people at the New York EPA, you're not sitting here every day. So, I feel like there's just a lot of concern. People's homes are vibrating, people are breathing the air, people have little kids. Just giving us access to the information in real time, I think, would be an incredibly useful and a sign of trust to the community to take care of ourselves a little bit too, rather than relying on a bunch of agencies that relay information to us in delayed time.
This is Jane from DEC. I think we had asked to Madison, and they had committed to that they were going to post the daily reports or the daily air monitoring on the daily basis when they're sending it to us. So that is available. Maybe the website that you have set up is not. Maybe we can advertise that a little bit better. Maybe Lael can get that out to everyone. The link to see that data daily.
You can send a follow-up email.
And Lael, let us know if you have any issues, but the reports are updated daily. So if someone needs help accessing it, it's on the link, it's in folders, and they're there.
I do think it's a good point about informing the community. I did some flyering around on just posting on lampposts and things like that. But if there was a space that we could get from the site itself, that would be really great.
I will tell you, Lael, and this goes to the electeds as well. I have reached out. I finally got a contact person at City Building Department to try and have a conversation with them about being able to post that this is a Superfund site or a brownfield site, and these are the contact information. There is there is some sort of a city regulation that you can only post things that the Department of Building approves, or that are related to permits or things like that. I am trying to see if there's a way that we can get these signs done. Right now, it's not approved.
All right, well, Jane,
Hi, Jane. Sorry, I don't want to, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Damaris. I'm actually with the Department of Buildings. Jane, I can share my contact information with you directly, so I can help, I can assist you with that.
Yeah, please do. I had gotten a name from OER, from Mark McIntyre. I don't know if it was you or somebody else, but that's who I was going to start the conversation with. But certainly if you're the right person, then please get me your information and I'll follow up.
More than likely, yeah. So I'll send you a direct message.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You have our commitment that once that's approved, the signs will go up.
Excellent. I guess
Thank you.
Thing that was raised, I think, is for the electeds to follow up on maybe some legislation about community access to air monitoring. I know it's been raised before. Really important to continue to think about doing something on that. All right, moving on to Laura, and then Katie is up.
Hi, sorry about that. So my husband and I live on the corner of DuPont and Manhattan toward the back of our building. And we could hear and feel the vibrations that are going on. So we took a couple of walks. The last one was on Tuesday. It was like the Wild West around all North Greenpoint. Dust all over the place. From NuHart, I saw that they're actually running the water line right down the center of the crosswalk. No way to avoid it. Right by the disabled ramps, which is an issue for my husband and I. That day, between the safety issues and the dust, I ended up hurting my ankle. I ended up taking my inhaler, and like the next time I hurt myself on the property, you'll be getting that call from an attorney. So like it's something to, and I won't play with it. You guys need to be a little bit more cautious about how you're setting things up. And like Darren said before, there's an issue with so many things going on at the same time. I'm glad, Emily, that you brought it up as well. At 54 DuPont Street, there's a stop work order. I took pictures of people working there. The dust was so out of control from multiple sites around on DuPont and Clay that I couldn't really tell which one was causing the most dust. So that in and of itself is a problem. There has to be some kind of plan, like to address the dust, the overall dust issue. And this has been my beef for many years. We've got so many things going on in the neighborhood that I really think DEC, DOH could be doing more. If the laws are satisfied with exposing people to this much impact, then it's time for that to change. It's really time for that to change. And as far as the thing with the water line running down the crosswalk, I mean, that's a very simple thing. That should change immediately. That could have been run on the outside of the crosswalk. But I could name a couple of different ways that you could run that. And another lady on this call mentioned that about the signage for the cars, and I can attest for that because that was one of my complaints. I took photos of everything. So there needs to be signage for the cars too. Otherwise, you're going to cause accidents there too. And that's all.
Is the water line something that can be fixed?
So I just want 100%. I just think that there may be some hoses that have ramps on top of them, and depending on logistics for the offsite walls, so we're taking precaution. We're going to reevaluate it, but I just need to understand exactly the condition that Laura is talking about.
No, it's not about the ramps. They had ramps over the hoses. It's the location of the hose. It ran right down the center of the crosswalk.
Okay,
no
listen, I'll take your word for it. I don't know that hose location right now, but I'll talk to the construction manager and see what can be done.
Thanks. All right, gonna move on to Katie.
Hi. So my first thing is more of a statement of, it definitely feels like we are all of a sudden living in a garbage can. I live on 53 Clay next to 29 Clay. House has been shaking as well. Obviously that's not your guys' problem, but the next part is like just garbage everywhere. Obviously with more trucks, more construction workers like going in and out. Can Madison or anyone bring in garbage cans or bring in policies to like make sure that our dog's not stepping on glass and like we're not, knee deep in garbage basically, because every time the construction site brings in more people, there's just like more garbage that we're living in.
So I understand your concern. I know that we have laborers that are dedicated to cleaning up around the perimeter of our site. I know we put netting on some of the tree pits to make sure that people weren't throwing garbage to congregate and build up in those tree pits. I also know that we have from our cameras seen workers from other sites and other neighbors and people just throwing garbage. So we are trying to do our best. Again, if you ever saw garbage building up in a certain location, in the past, people have snapped photos. I know they sent it to Ashley and we've directed the construction team to jump on it immediately. So we're on it. To answer the other part of your question, we're not like allowed to just buy garbage cans and throw it on the street. But we definitely can have our laborers and our site team work to clean up around the site the best that we can.
Yeah, I'll jump in here too, Katie. If we can be helpful, we want to help as well, try and improve cleanliness around the neighborhood. So I'm going to put our email in the chat. Let us know specifically which blocks you're most concerned about from a garbage standpoint. We'll work to get some of the teams that we fund to do supplemental street cleanup to support cleaning the streets in Northern Greenpoint. And if there are intersections where you're looking for garbage cans, we can try to fund and install some new garbage cans as well with the Department of Sanitation. And we're also organizing community cleanups throughout the spring and summer. So we'll definitely plan one for Northern Greenpoint. We've done a couple in Northern Greenpoint over the past year, but we'll do some more. So, and we'll partner with our elected officials on each of those efforts. So just reach out to us with the specifics on what streets you're looking for to improve street cleanliness and have some additional garbage pickup. And if there are intersections that are missing garbage cans, we'll try to follow up on both of those and do our best to help.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna move on to Katya.
Yes, hi. I just have some questions from like what you've talked about earlier, just like clarifying. I'm a little confused about the air monitors, as in, are they up already or are you planning on putting them up? And if they aren't up yet, when are they going up and where are they going up? Because people are asking that in the chat and nobody has answered that. So that would be the first one.
So the air monitoring.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so they're installed every single day that there's work being performed on the site. Monitors are there and a rep from the environmental firm, Haley Aldrich, is there. In the daily reports, you see the data, but you also see a site plan that shows the locations of the monitors every single day.
Okay.
So the monitors change locations daily depending on wind direction, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we can't direct you to show you where it is.
But like, correct, but let's say you're walking by the fence and you see the plexiglass and you look through and you see something on a tripod that has a big box up top. That is really the air monitor.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a suitcase sitting on a tripod.
And so then I was just wondering about what, like, you're talking about organic compounds and particulates. Is there a place where we can see like all the different types of things that we could, like when you're remediating the site, like what possibly we could be exposed to? Or if there's like a place I can access your background data for how you're determining what like a background level of exposure would be? If that makes sense.
So there's a couple of questions there to unpack. One is the background data about all the contaminants that are at the site that are in the soil and the groundwater and the soil vapor. All of that is available from the DEC Info Locator website. Lael, I think you have a link to that. If you could share that again. In terms of the air monitoring, again, the reason we do an upwind and downwind is to see what is the difference between what is coming onto the site from other potential sources and what is being contributed to by the site. Is that your question?
Not really. I think I just wanted to know where I could get background on how you determine what the background levels are, just so that I can kind of decide what level.
The back would be what's in the upwind monitor.
Okay.
So it's an actual monitor that's right there to tell you, you know, what it's like that is not a light blowing onto the site. So
Okay.
it tells what it generally is like right there, just, you know, upwind.
Mhm.
So, and that should be part of the reports that are available.
Okay.
And they're posted every day.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I guess the last thing I was just gonna say is I know we're talking about vibration levels being below a threshold that is like normal, but like we do all live in very, very old houses. And somebody else mentioned that their house also cracked, and we have a crack in our wall as well because of the vibrations that happen every morning and make the wall shake. So I think just like remember that people are like living here and like dealing with this every day. And just, I guess it's like, I know it's only 2 more weeks of that, but if there is a way that it can be decreased to a like safer level, that's all I want to say. It's not a question. I just wanted to say that.
Well, in addition to that, if you're noticing some sort of an issue actually going on actively, reach out, you know, let us know that you're noticing an issue, you know, when you're noticing it, when it's a problem too, because it's not always something that we would always know, you know, maybe related to the site, maybe related to something else, but if we don't know about it, we can't necessarily do anything about it.
So if people have cracks in their walls that are new, who would they contact?
Probably Haley and Aldrich, right?
Well,
I mean,
hang on, the vibration monitoring and all of that is under the auspices of the Department of Buildings. It's not under DEC or
Okay.
DOH.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a Department of Building. So anytime there's an issue, like, I'm not sure who was just speaking, but if we don't know about it, then we can't send an inspector. If we're not aware of any issues that are happening, then obviously there's no way for us to know. So if there's any issues taking place at your apartments in regards to cracks in the walls, anything like that, please submit a 311 complaint. I mean, obviously Department of Buildings is operating between the hours of 9 and 5. But if you are submitting a complaint after hours, we have after hours teams. So our emergency response teams that work 24/7. So even if it's late at night, submit it, say that there is vibrations, heavy vibrations, cracks in the walls due to the construction. We'll get an inspector out there as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Assemblymember Gallagher, you're up.
Okay, so I just want to first say that I really appreciate having all the people here together. I am very concerned just because this requires such a tight ship and so much communication, and so many of the pieces are like in different agencies and departments. I really want to work together to try to come up with some kind of communication plan that goes beyond what we're doing right now. And then I do have a question. Thinking about the trucking really gives me pause, just because I know with 9/11, they used a similar method to try to get the soil out that was contaminated, and a lot of it ended up dispersed around the neighborhood. And I mean, that was, 20 years ago. So I'm sure that there's a better, I know you've gone in detail before about the very strong kind of system you have, but I want to know if there's going to be people who residents can get in touch with immediately on site, and also that there's going to be regular monitoring of like the fact that the trucks aren't cascading debris. And I really, really would like us to create a trucking schedule that can be public about when the trucks are coming in and out with the contaminated material, because I think that would really help everyone feel more safe. And then my last piece is that I know the developers mentioned at the beginning that, 421A is a really critical component. I'm sure that not everyone on this call is like following Albany's every single move because, it can be kind of dull. And I say that as someone who's there. But, you know, 421A expired. I know most of the city legislators do not want to see it renewed. I know the governor's trying to put an extension in the budget that would address projects like this one. But I have to tell you, I am not sure that that's going to pass, because we have all seen the kind of bad faith deals that other developers have done with 421A, and pretty much everybody's tired of 421A. So I'm wondering, like, if 421A does not end up in the budget in March, like, what happens with this project?
Think, listen, it's an important piece of the project. I think we've been very clear about it's very expensive to clean up, and the economics for the tax abatement on the back end are critical to it.
So does that mean like the project stops in March if it's not in the budget on April, or stops in April if the budget is on April 1st, doesn't have the 421A renewal in it?
I think that the 421A is very critical to the success of this project.
Because I need to know, like, do we end up with a pit of exposed contaminants in the ground if this tax thing doesn't get renewed?
Well, I thought you had laid out a schedule for us, Zach, that you would meet without the extension. You still have a schedule that would meet the June 2026.
Listen, of course, right? But again, there's tents, there's unknown subsurface conditions. The 421A program as laid out today is draconian. It's either you get TCO or you don't for the units. So if you don't get TCO, you don't get the abatement. So I think,
but like, you've started this project that's extremely, honestly, it's dangerous. This is a dangerous project. And I just want to know that you're going to see it through it and not leave us in the lurch of, like, you know, half done project because the entire 150 assembly members and 63 legislators collectively decided that they didn't want 421A to be extended.
and the intent is to, as I've been very clear, we want to pursue the cleanup. We want to push forward. As of now, it seems as the schedule is going to complete before the expiration date, which is June 15, 2026. I think we know there's a ton of uncertainties on construction. We're pushing as much, pushing forward. And honestly, thank you to the coordination and collaboration of this team. We wouldn't have got here this quickly if it wasn't for us communicating and working together. But I think, Emily, you understand that obviously cleanup is expensive. Building a building, if the taxes, let's say the abatement wasn't there, the deal doesn't work. As you're sitting with the building.
I think, we didn't renew it last year. And I know that there's been a group of places that have asked for a special extension. I believe this project's part of that, right? Is this part of that that's asking for the special extension?
So I'm not that familiar with that. I know there's been conversations about projects like this almost should be an exception to the rule because the benefit of the cleanup outweighs the benefit necessary of the tax abatement. But listen, if you want to follow up after this and we get our office.
Yeah, because I'm just concerned that we're going to be kind of like, the process is going to begin and then things are going to go in an unexpected way as they always do during budget. And, I just want to make sure that the community isn't going to get
100%. And I understand where you're coming from and I'm happy to continue this dialogue.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'm sorry to cut the queue here, but I do want to really second what Assemblymember Gallagher is saying. This entire conversation has been around trust, and the community is really trusting that, we're in earnest, you're willing to work with us, that, you will attend these sessions moving forward for any task force or put up more flyers to get more information out there. But I think we deserve a commitment from you to know that if 421A does not pass in the budget this year, and being fully transparent, I ran on 421A not getting reviewed. So that's just, what these constituents and my entire district elected me to do, just being, fully honest, that the site will be safe and that constituents will be safe. So I just, not a commitment, maybe we can continue to talk about it, but I do think that Assemblymember Gallagher's point was very, very important, and that we do deserve that type of reassurance. Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm happy to sit down with you in your office. I think 421A is a complicated issue, right? Across states and projects in history. I think what Madison's been very clear about is the importance of cleaning up and communicating, but also looking at the facts of this particular site and the history and how expensive removing the contaminated soil is, and how the only way something would pencil on this site would be for that abatement to be in place. So that has been very clear for the last year and a half since we've been talking about the project. So I understand your position. I respect that. But in terms of our communication with everyone, that has always been a piece of the puzzle. It's all about cleaning it up, and everyone understands the basics of it, that, something has to give. And this particular project, that's all I'm speaking about. The larger issue, I understand, and I'm happy to, follow up with dialogue.
I'll give my time to the folks who want to ask questions, but let's absolutely continue talking. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll set up a meeting with the electeds and you guys again. And I'd love to have everybody there, because this is, obviously not replicate the exact same meeting we're having, but the agencies there too, because we do have to figure out like a plan if this isn't gonna happen. Because for me, it's a little deja vu, because we've seen this site get picked up and dropped before. It feels like that's not gonna happen, but I'm telling you, like the 421A thing, I don't know if it's gonna move. It was like so hot last year. Everybody was like, absolutely not. So it's like a really big thing in the negotiation right now. And yeah, I just personally, like if I wasn't sure that I was gonna have the money to do something all the way through, I would wait till I had the money to start it, but I'm not a developer, so. Okay, thanks.
So we're reaching the end of our time. I just want to kind of follow that up with, can we just get a summary of when the tent is expected to go up and when remediation is expected to start?
March
1st. Sometime in March, has it been?
Let's say mid-March right now, but yes, that's the plan.
Can we like maybe just see if 421A passes before you start remediation and before you actually commit to the schedule? Like that seems kind of crazy. Hello.
It's complicated. There's two different pieces, right? There's an abatement in place that the end date is June 15, 2026. We believe, based on our schedule and the execution, that there's no issue completing the project within that time frame. The point was the uncertainty of construction, tents, remediation, and that, plays into it. So the extension only adds more certainty and cushion that everything will be completed in that time.
And do you have the full go-ahead to start the remediation, or are we still waiting on final approval?
So on the brownfield site, we're good. I know that we received comments on the 90% that we designed. We resubmitted 100%.
Went in today.
It went in today 100%. So once I get that's reviewed and approved, then I'm sure there's a few administrative steps, but I believe then we would have the full go-ahead on the Superfund site. But the timing would work out that if, let's say, it's 3 months on the brownfield, then we transition to phase 2, which is phase 1 of the Superfund, and it all works sequentially and as planned.
So the Superfund remediation is not likely to start in June. That's the brownfield remediation starting then.
Oh, brownfield is, let's say, March to June, and then Superfund starts in June.
And we will have notification when the remediation for the Superfund is approved. Jane?
Yes.
Something
When
that
we, well, when we issued the approval on the 100% design, we'll copy you guys.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for their time. Some important issues were brought up at the very end that cited that our elected representatives are gonna follow up on. Thank you everyone for attending. We'll stay in touch and have a good night.
Thank you.